This is a circle jerk of conspiracy with me, Johnny Vedmo, over at Newspaste, and I'm here with some friends. Can you introduce yourself, please, to the audiences out there?
Hello, I'm Rhys, and this is
Adam, indeed.
And we are not Adam Indeed. That's not his name's not Adam Indeed. It's just Adam. He's just saying Indeed. But we're the two hosts on The Schism. We've had Johnny on as a guest on our show before, talking about Bill Gates mainly.
Yeah, and your deep history into famous figures as far back as King Henry VIII.
Yeah, covered a bit of Klaus Schwab as well. But
always like a bit of that.
But today we're going to be taking a deep dive into everything Epstein, or at least what led to the road to Epstein being taken down. So we have to ask you, Johnny, where did it all begin? Where do we start this story from? Because you need to lay a lot of groundwork before we get anywhere near.
At grassroots level.
Yeah, grassroots level. Thank you for having me on again, and thank you for being part of this. I mean, this is a joint thing going out between the Schism and Newspaste, and I find that just to be something that I'd like to see going on over and over. I know my guys are going to love you. Your work and vice versa. So we got to get something more going on from this. This road. I mean, we all know that Jeffrey Epstein was a dirty pervert. Yeah, we all know that he loved young girls. He liked them like the famous A&P grocery heir, George Huntington Hartford II. He liked his girls prime. So 18 was too old for Jeffrey Epstein. And he built up a network. He was more than just a child trafficking pedophile, but he built up a network that allowed him to see girls and have girls brought to him on a regular basis. And a lot of that was where a lot of people like me started off. I was already looking at a lot of the people like sex in politics and, kids going missing and what's happening and all of this scandal. And it's obviously a place where when you start doing journalism, you gravitate to, you can't help but to, it's like, oh my God, look, so-and-so had sex with so-and-so. And when you start to discover that there's politicians having sex with children, then you're like, oh God, okay, now people should be pointing at that, but no one's pointing at that. And you go through it and you kind of like unpick it. Yeah, I know, isn't it? And it's probably been the same for most of history, human history, that's been the norm to an extent. And it's hard to get a grasp of, because you see something like that, it becomes so visceral. You understand something like that, it becomes so visceral. You're like, oh my God, how dare these guys? And you get angry, and then that puts a cloud over most of the like your logical mind, stops you thinking rationally. And what my type of journalism, what I do is I kind of I spend 2 days being angry with the subject, and then I go on and just kind of like say, okay, what's the next step? What does this all mean? And what does it really look like? Is it just like constantly, because at the moment we've got in mind, like, Jeffrey Epstein's hanging around in his home in Palm Beach, say, and Ghislaine Maxwell goes out, grooms a 14-year-old on a park bench, who's on lunch break from school, takes her home. Jeffrey Epstein has sex with her and then sells her off to his friends, etc. But that's just like that simplistic view, of course, just didn't happen. It wasn't like that. It was a big operation. And one thing that I really was surprised at when I looked at is that 99.99% of the girls' experiences, so the assaults that happened, the sexual assaults that happened against young girls, were Jeffrey Epstein himself. They weren't presidents, prime ministers, CEOs. The people who were given to those guys were usually over the age of 18 and were usually very much defined part of the network, somehow being paid by Epstein for their services. So that becomes really murky world. And those two worlds have been purposely mixed up. So the amount of young girls who have been raped between the age of 14 and 17, who have had no ability to consent, no option to know what was going on, were were groomed into believing that they were going to be given a place in an organization where they would have a career, that they could be a model, all of these different things. And then all they'd have to do is start by giving massages to this billionaire. And then they would be put into a room though, and they would turn around and Ghislaine Maxwell's at the door, who's groomed them and brought them in, one of the ones who's groomed them, and they can't get out, and then they're stuck in a cycle. Then they're sending cars around their house, and suddenly they're being phoned on their phone. You right, get in the car, it's outside, and that car's going to be going backwards forwards to Jeffrey Epstein. What he did was awful. But he wasn't only doing that, of course. That was his. We're able to examine his sex crimes from, say, started between 1990 and 1994. It seems that the organized sex trafficking of young girls, especially through his Palm Beach residency and a bit is New York, but mainly it seems like Palm Beach seemed to be his main base. That started between 1990 and 1994 properly, and become really so organized and systematic that by 2004, 2005, when Epstein was being rumbled, when the first time the police had to react properly to an accusation against him and an investigation began, Epstein, if you had just looked at the past 10 years from that point and said, from 1994 to 2004, how many crimes did Jeffrey Epstein commit against these girls? Just against these girls, not anything else, not all of his espionage. You're talking. There with Savile. So 2 to 3 times a day for 10 years is it. I think I calculated it being over 8,000. Roughly, if you calculate 2.5 times that many days, it's roughly 8,000 charges of sexual assault on minors would have been coming if the one of the worst possibilities was coming Jeffrey Epstein's way. Now, what does that mean for anybody who's facing 8,000 plus?
Well, firstly, it means that he could brag. You know, when people say, "I've had as many whatever as you have hot meals," he could genuinely brag that. If it was 3 a day.
Yeah,
because I reckon he probably ate salad as well. Quite a lot.
That's 3 hot meals a day. I mean,
yeah.
But he wasn't a very big guy. He looked like he was prone to the odd salad. He was a skinny little rat.
He was doing more molesting than hot meals.
Well, that's why he was so.
That's safe to say.
Probably why he was so thin. He was wearing all that energy off.
I don't think he was that thin. I think he was.
No, he's just like slithery.
I'm not sure. I think we kind of like have an idea of Jeffrey Epstein all of the time, and it kind of morphs and changes. But he was actually quite a chunky guy at times. When he was young, he was grinning a little bit more. Yeah. Oh well, why would you not be grinning when life is going your way and you are one of the most powerful people in the world? Because I mean, if you get back to where we were, it's like, you've got this point where he's got everything. At 2004, 2005, he's already recently exposed himself by going on a big tour. A big tour of Africa and Asia in 2002 with Bill Clinton, the one where they went with Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker and the like. That one meant that he had exposed himself to the press, and the press were now asking loads of questions, and that eventually led to speculation in the press, accusations of press cover-up later on, which I'm not sure is completely there are things that will be unraveled within this trilogy that will make more sense of what happened after 2004, 2005 and why it ended in Jeffrey Epstein's death, because Jeffrey Epstein was one of the most connected men in the world. He was a extremely fascinating person to concentrate on and look at. But these articles are not about Jeffrey Epstein himself until we get to the third, a little bit in the second, and definitely in the third part of this series. This is about someone who's supposed to be supposedly opposite Jeffrey Epstein, on the opposite team. The girls who were being abused all needed legal representation. Of course, when the case started to roll, the cases started to roll, and that took a long time. A lot of the named victims didn't come out until much after that time when he first got his first prosecution. And by 2014, they were starting to build up a new case against Jeffrey Epstein. And from that point on, Brad Edwards, who was representing bulk of the Epstein victims, including Virginia Giuffre, Virginia Roberts. He was co-opted and brought into another flock, another fold, a legal fold by two other legal men, lawyers, attorneys. I'm not sure. I'm not sure these guys can be classed as legit by law, because some of their actions are really suspicious and dodgy when you investigate them. But J. Stanley Pottinger and David Bowies are two men who came and basically got Brad Edwards to join with them. And from there came the case against Jeffrey Epstein eventually, and eventually came the takedown of Jeffrey Epstein. Finding out what was actually happening, I've been involved with victims of Jeffrey Epstein. I've talked to the victims, some of the victims. I've written about the case in depth. I've worked with other people who people know very well, who are experts on the case, the leading experts on the case, especially on the intelligence front, people like Whitney Webb. So I've got a really good understanding of the case. And there was loads that didn't make sense. And there was certain things that happened in the past year that made me say, I don't understand what's really going on here. When Whitney Webb was researching One Nation Under Blackmail, she asked me to go and research certain parts of Volume 2. And doing that, I was like, well, I know what I'm going to see already. That's how I felt. I feel so naive. I felt, I know what I'm going to see already. I know the Epstein case inside and out. I'm going to research this, and it's going to be this, and this. I know the order of things. I know how it all goes. This will be easy. And it took probably about 5 weeks, 6 weeks extra than I expected it to take, because I just kept finding things that I didn't expect to find. And discovering that when one of my jobs was to analyze all of the witness statements that I could find in the press or actual evidence, and kind of understand the pattern. I already studied FBI profiling for pedophiles. So to understand the pattern of how a pedophile works, you basically pigeonhole pedophiles under certain type of categories. And there's basically two main types of category. There's situational pedophiles and there's preferential pedophiles. Preferential pedophiles prefer younger mates. They see young people as potential mates. That's what they see. That's their preference sexually is to children. And of course, situational pedophile is different. We'll have adult relationships, will mainly be in relationships with adults, will find adults attractive, but situational pressures will cause them to offend. They will suddenly I need to exert, I don't have power in my life over here, so I need to exert power over someone who doesn't have power in a way that cannot fail. That's the psychological idea of how situational pedophiles come. And then in those categories, there's different categories of offenders. So one of
then you've got Epstein.
well,
he's of his own.
He is.
Him and Savile.
Very slim. There's a very slim category. It's only 1% of preferential pedophiles are sadistic preferential pedophiles. You see, most preferential pedophiles actually, and I know this is probably hard to understand, but their mind is obviously busted in some way, and they see themselves as rightly in love with a child. A preferential pedophile, most of them, the 99%, will say, I love this child and she loves me. and I can give the best to that child, and the child loves me back, and it's a proper loving, and that's how they rationalize it in their mind. But it's easy to rationalize that way because their mind works that way, so it feels natural to them for it to be that way. But it's usually from a trauma that's happened in childhood during brain development that stopped their brain developing the normative function that would lead you to finding more mature mates sexually attractive eventually. And instead, they're stuck in this sort of place of once upon a time. And in a sense, it's a projection of their own want to cradle their own trauma that they suffered through childhood. That's the majority. But then there's a really slim amount of preferential pedophiles who are sadistic, evil, horrible, even slimmer, who are murderers, who will, rape and murder children. And we hear about these ones really loud. We see them in the press. In Britain, we had Jamie Bolger was an example of that. I mean, one of the kid. For people who don't know about Jamie Bolger, he was like, 3 years old, and the one guy, I think it was Venables, was the one who was he was the sadistic preferential pedophile. So you can see the difference. One's led, he might not even be a pedophile. He's like he's a kid. He's in a situation has coerced him to doing this behavior. But the other one has offended over and over again afterwards and has been caught offending. And
it on the child play movies.
Yeah, of course, that's it. There you go. It's all Chucky. It's Chucky all the way down. So I mean, trying to catch up. This is a complicated case. So explaining this sort of stuff, you have to often explain how pedophiles work and what the different type of pedophiles are and where Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell work, because it's really rare. Female pedophiles, we already know, is less likely. It's not completely rare. Some people believe it's more common than actually believed. But that women can hide it more because they have much more closed access to children. I don't know if that's true, and by the looks of violence and aggression, it seems to be 8 times more likely in a man. So maybe that's in relation somehow, like sexual violence or abuse is like somehow related. I don't know about that, but Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein both seem to fit into they're narcissists, they're sadistic preferential pedophiles. They combine together and they might have sex with each other, but they both have a preference for younger partners of about the same age. So for them to link up together makes a hell of a lot of sense. Now, for Ghislaine Maxwell, it might not have been like all sexual stuff. It was like a sexual power. She would get turned on by the power she had over other people. So bringing girls to Jeffrey Epstein was a sexual kick within itself in that sense.
So him as well, I feel like.
Most definitely. So there's
want to call them a dream team.
No. They don't want to find each other. No. They are, they're a nightmare duo. But completely. If they're pedophiles, they're a dream team of pedophiles. The Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein, that would be the best way to describe them. If your goal is to groom and molest as many young girls as possible, then these guys are possibly some of the best in the world who have ever been caught.
Because she's such a key component of it as well, because being a female, she could get, it was mostly young girls, right? I mean, she was getting the young girls' trust, and then she's like, you described, her just kind of by the door or watching or whatever. Yeah.
They most of them, I mean, this is repeated.
It's kind of impossible without her.
We got go on, but listen, this is repeated over and over in witness testimony, and this is the point I'm trying to make now with explaining a lot of this as well. When you see repeated over and over again that girls went into a massage room, found a naked Jeffrey Epstein, or Jeffrey Epstein in a towel, then he's revealed naked, they would turn around towards the door as the first thing they would do nearly every time. It's like an automatic reaction. And multiple times you hear Ghislaine Maxwell is standing at the door. So it's a pattern of a behavior, a pattern of criminality, a pattern that you can say that is their profile, part of their profile. pedophile is part of what they do. She went out and groomed either young girls who would groom other girls or girls directly. Like there's stories of her doing that. Some of them, I think, though, are from people who now, after the information I've received, you should take with a pinch of salt some things. It's really easy when you've got two offenders like this to then suddenly throw in a load of accusations here and a load of accusations there to try and make a little bit of money. Now, here's another bit. These people, this criminality, this profiling means there's cycles and there's patterns. And then you can see when the patterns don't match. And this is where it started. Some of the behavior of one victim, supposed victim in particular, caused a load of events which led me to say, I've got to look at that anyway, because I've seen that there's not only an extremely repeated pattern behavior within the criminality of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, but there's some things that don't make sense. Some accusations and some statements people have made that are not their criminality. They're not in their profile at all, do not fit them at all. And it doesn't make any sense. And some people have said an array of things that just completely break the profile. And that's so rare within offending. Within offending is offenders offend the same way nearly all the time. Jeffrey Epstein had it done his way so he could have things his way all of the time. It's really hard to hear the same evidence over and over again, then hear something that's completely different and not notice it. And that led me down a road which then made me question something and have to look into something. And that led me to a person who seemed to be central. And this is why it's so important. I mean, I'm so happy to be talking to you. This is the first time that I'm able to, on record, say this out loud. This has been 8 months in the making, but longer than that. I mean, I've been heading towards this for a while, and I think this is potentially my seminal work. I did amazing work on Klaus Schwab and stuff, and people really appreciated it and said, "Oh, that's some of the best work I've ever seen." This stuff is going to go beyond that. This stuff is really about fundamentally exposing massive parts of the Epstein conspiracy that haven't been fully shown to the public, because the public have been given this idea that Jeffrey Epstein was a child trafficking pedophile. Only look at that. That's where Whitney Webb started to break the mold, where she was like, no, look at all of the Epstein espionage. Look at all of these intelligence games, the financing, the hedge fund manager, the Ponzi scheme, all of these different things. He's like a man of many faces. He's a realtor. He deals in real estate, does he? He's a technological like evangelist, it seems, getting people to create the technologies that you want to go. He's setting up things that just seem like completely amazing, and he's got his finger in every pie. Politically, he's in every single politician that he wants on the Democratic Party, focused in the Democratic Party on his side. So he's funding like all of the potential presidents and of the future. And by 1994 to 2002, he's funding John Kerry, and only stops funding him 2 years before he's running for president. Before that, he was funding Joe Lieberman and Bill Richardson. Both of those were the most likely candidates to be Al Gore's running mate during the Bush and Gore election, which of course ended up going in Bush's favor. And of course, down with the Clintons completely. All of these guys like revolving in Democratic circles. Also like close with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Back in the 90s and onwards. I mean, Robert F. Kennedy was still attending Ghislaine Maxwell's parties. I think in one of the recent articles, it was 2004 14 or 16. It's with the I think that was with the one with Neil deGrasse Tyson in as well, over Ghislaine Maxwell's house. So they're still mingling with these people, and that's not saying that Robert F. Kennedy hasn't done good things, but you've got to look at him and say, well, he's still hanging around with pretty bad folk here and there, and he like some of those answers have to be given. And it's pretty clear that not everybody knew what was going on in Epstein's circle. So it's a very complicated state of affairs. But it's pretty clear that Epstein's accusers, victims, the vast majority had one story to tell, and a couple of them had a different story. And that led to me investigating someone in particular, led me to Stanley Pottinger, and led me to something I found in 2017 about Stanley Pottinger. And that's who we're going to discuss today. And for the rest, because the first article in this series is called The Pottinger Identity, and follows Pottinger's early life, says a bit about his father, a bit about his brother David Forbes Pottinger. He's got, I mean, extremely. I mean, you guys have read the first article. You're the first people outside a very small network to have read that first article. You'll see all of them first. I mean, the first one's like, wow, what an amazing adventure. The second one's like, oh my God, who are these people? And the third one's like, you just can't even believe that this is real anymore, and it isn't. It's all made up. It's gonna be the Pottinger Identity, Pottinger Supremacy, and the Pottinger Ultimatum. We're heading towards the death, the takedown of Jeffrey Epstein, and we're looking at the main man, the central person involved in not only the takedown and eventual, obviously, cover up of Jeffrey Epstein's death while in custody, but this guy signed off Watergate. He signed off the Kent State Massacre. He signed off Martin Luther King's assassination. He signed off where he was involved in allowing like some COINTELPRO sort of deal between George Bush and George Bush's CIA getting the rights to use domestic surveillance on American citizens after the assassination of Orlando Letelier on Embassy Row in Washington. That was part of the Operation Condor, which was then used as an excuse to surveil domestically. We'll talk about that today as well. And there's a load of other things he did. And we'll talk about those in the future. Loads of other, including the Iran-Contra scandal being central to that and other things. This man, eventually, he's one of the main representatives for all of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, why would the CIA not want their top guy standing above it all and deciding what's happening?
Before we go too deep into him, because you mentioned quite a while back when you the lawyer for David Bowie as well. Where did that?
No, David Bowie's is one of the lawyers. Yeah, sorry, not David Bowie.
David Bowie.
No.
Over, and I was like,
David Bowie's, spelled Boies, is one of the main lawyers.
Legitimate question. If I thought he said David Bowie's lawyer, it's like, how's Bowie fucking?
He's just a star man representing Jeffrey Epstein.
Everyone.
Yeah. No, that one. Yeah. No, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein were represented by David Bowie, Freddie Mercury, and Frank Zappa, the ghost of Frank Zappa, who was very inappropriate throughout the trials, especially considering the subject.
I'm glad I brought that up, and I'll tell you why. It sounds like a stupid question, but how many people listening heard David Bowie and thought, whoa,
holy hell. That's what I thought when I first heard David Bowie as well.
It's an unusual name.
Yeah, David.
But his name's Bowie's.
Bowies, yeah.
Bowies,
And he's an extremely interesting character. We'll get more on to Bowies.
Got a big thunderbolt down his plane.
Yeah. He's certainly closer to Ziggy Stardust than he is a human. That's for sure. I'll say that. Let's get into this. I want to share some of the source articles today and tell you a little bit about the story, because of course we exist not only inside our own channels, but we exist inside this article too. The people who can read this article will find this conversation within the article, so that you can have, they can have so you can explore the article with us here. And that's a really important part of what I do as work. I want people to see some of the sources, and some of the conclusion is not just for just come to me. There's a load of evidence that backs it up. So we're going to go through, and some of it I'll skip over quickly, and I'll talk you through it. Each article has its own like separate sources and separate points where it's like, oh wow, that's a really interesting piece, or that's a really interesting piece. And some of it is really central to understanding how these people are involved. But Pottinger is our main guy we're looking at, John Stanley Pottinger. Though we will take a diversion pretty early on. So I will share my screen with you all now. And here we go. So you can see that, guys?
Yes.
See where we are? I bet you don't see where we are. Let me see where we are. Here we go.
Pair of underpants.
The Dayton Club.
I know, this is brilliant. This is the Dayton Daily News. So we're up here on page 10 of the Dayton. Oh, look at this girl's face. And this is one of the joys of looking through, looking for this sort of like information, trying to track down the truth, is you have to spend a lot of time in old newspaper archives and this stuff. And these are really nice to look at. But basically, I'm introducing you to a name here. This is 1954. And here you see John Pottinger. Now, we're talking about John Stanley Pottinger. And John Stanley Pottinger went by the name Stanley Pottinger. His father was also called John Pottinger, and this is that John Pottinger. And John Pottinger was an insurance man. He was also part of the Dayton Rotary Club, amongst other things. And as you go through time, in 1953, they're talking about John Pottinger here in the Dayton Daily News. Again, they're talking a lot about John Pottinger in Dayton, because that's where he's based, and that's where Pottinger was brought up. And here it says, like, you see John Pottinger of 121 S. Del Mar, they used to give them the address in the newspapers back then, has a boat, entered in the regional sailboat races a Sandusky Saturday. Pottinger will be bidding for one of 15 top positions, and this is something that comes up over and over again. Now, his family was originally from Racine. I think that's how you say it, Racine, Wisconsin. But this is something you'll see. Another theme you'll see. John Pottinger liked to sail. He was a yachtsman, and he used to take young John Jr., which I don't think he was called John Jr. I think they could just called him Stanley Pottinger. He used to take young J. Stanley Pottinger out on his sailboating trips. But by the time he was 48 in 1958, John Pottinger dies after heart surgery. Now, there's quite a lot in the article that explains about who Pottinger is, and at this point in 1958, his son, Stanley Pottinger, is going to Harvard. So he's in Harvard at this point, studying law and starting to study law. And he had just gone he had just traveled around, I think they had actually gone to Soviet Russia in a yacht, had sailed to Soviet Russia in a yacht just the same year as this. And when they had returned, John Stanley Pottinger was giving speeches to a room full of adults. I think it says a room full of adults, this young boy who was about 17 at the time, about what it was like behind the Iron Curtain. So obviously there's not many people who are taking their yacht and sailing during the peak of the Cold War, 1958, from America over to Soviet Russia. Do you know any who just that's something we're going to do and go back and no one's going to question it? By 1958, So by the end of 1958, he dies. He was actually, look at this, Pottinger was the 4th city commissioner of Dayton to die in office, which is a really...
I saw this in your article, Johnny. I thought this was incredible. I was like, the 4th one?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
what's going on in that job?
Well, his son eventually breaks this by being the 5th person to pretend to have died in office, in a sense. So we'll get to that eventually. Yeah, isn't it interesting? But this is a very interesting. I mean, he's a very interesting person. And now, if we go down to the bottom here in this article that announces his death. Yeah, and try not to look at the grimacing child over there with the black eye. He looks like he's been in trouble. It says here. This is talking about John Pottinger.
Like he's been to Epstein's Island.
Yeah. Okay, let's pull him out there. Let's get him out there. You did. Now he's back at Epstein's Island. Okay.
The irony is his name was LaFresh, but he didn't look that fresh.
No. Yeah, oh, Muck LaFresh. What a name, Jim Muck LaFresh. Okay, anyway, let's not look at Muck LaFresh. We got lots to go through. He's just a distraction. He's probably dead by now. Anyway, I know, but it's 1958. He must be about 6. I can't even imagine. No, he's about 70.
Great name.
Yeah, I know. I might contact him after this and say, hey, you were in our thing. So they're saying John Pottinger was active in the Rotary Club, Dayton City Club, Chamber of Commerce, Dayton Better Business Bureau, Shrine Club. He was a member of the F&AM, John Durst, they spell it wrong, John Durst Lodge, Scottish Rites, and had been a past president of this and that. Do you understand what any of that means there? Because F&M means he's a Freemason. The John Durst Lodge is his lodge that he belongs to, and Scottish Rite means he's a 32nd degree or above Freemason who he was also Bohemian Grove. So Stanley Pottinger's father was a very connected man. There he is, and he kind of looks like McFresh, does Bob Manick. Anyway, this is Stanley Pottinger's father. Very serious guy, and they mention him about his role and what he did. Characteristically, Mr. Pottinger undertook the surgery that was to prove fatal on the gambler's chance. So obviously he was a bit of he was known to be a bit of a guy who would test out his luck, and eventually he died. And this is the first picture of John Stanley Pottinger, his son. This is 6 years before.
Not
so
I flattering of angles.
I know, and isn't it amazing that he's black? No, sorry. Yes. It's not the most flattering of angles, but I don't think you got the choice back then.
It looked like their heads had been crushed in like a vice.
Yeah, indeed.
Slightly.
Well, it's probably the vice that they make their printing press. That's kind of vice. So this is Dayton Daily News, and I've explained a little bit about who John Pottinger was. John Pottinger Sr. dies in 1958, just as the young Stanley's going to university. And he was an insurance man, owned his own insurance company, actually, John Pottinger Insurance. And so obviously the boys were well off. But his sons, John Stanley Pottinger and David Forbes Pottinger, were well off. But John Stanley Pottinger is, you don't know what to name him. Later on, he's just known as Stan. Stan the Man. Yeah, he's one of those. Definitely the Stan the Man. And here it shows that he's from very young age, Junior Red Cross officers elected. And there you go, Stanley Pottinger, sixth grade student at Washington School, was elected president of elementary school division. And these awards throughout his schooling would go on, and through college would go on and on as well. Things like Junior Red Cross is interesting because, of course, Red Cross has some sort of like minor intelligence links in the past and major intelligence links during wars. And again, there you go. He's off in 1955. He's one of 5 Dayton youths heading for London for something that is about to attend the Baptist World Alliance in London. So he gets his chance to travel a bit around the world. And here on the 11th of November 1957, a year before his father's death, they're talking about 10 teenagers saluted by the Optimist. 10 Dayton youths were selected Saturday as typical teenagers as the climax at Optimist Club, a youth appreciation week. So they're being appreciated. And here you go. This is the Optimists. These are the 10 Optimists. And there's John Stanley Pottinger. And you see, sometimes they call him John Pottinger at this point. Later on, past when he's in the Nixon administration, then he's J. Stanley Pottinger nearly all of the time after that, and then he becomes Stanley Pottinger, and then he becomes Stan Pottinger, and that's partially goes through, I think, him wanting to leave certain part, like having to change his name slightly.
Funny seeing teenagers like that, like teenagers.
Yeah, I know, and it makes me want to put the hyphen in. But I'm excessive hyphen user.
It's a new word.
I love them.
Bear with us.
Yeah, yeah. How about you, teenager? I am like you. I am an adult, and you are a teenager. Yeah.
I love the smoking ad, by the way. On the previous page, it said "smoke for pleasure."
Yeah. A lot of that. I mean, going back in the past is fantastic. But this is to show you that John Stanley Pottinger, he was constantly selected for all of these. Like, you're amazing. What an amazing youth this guy is. Look at this young guy. Students visit city and county officials, and here's a young John Stanley Pottinger again in Dayton Daily News, and he's smiling. Do you reckon this is McFresh when when he grew up?
He's like McLovin on steroids.
Yeah. McFluffin. No, that's not good.
McFresh. So he's got the French.
Yeah.
That's a sleazy smile.
There's one of the officials in power during the 40s and 50s. One of the
I was
guys
looking at her name tag. Honest.
Yeah.
I got chloroform in my back pocket.
Hey, that guy is a bad boy. This guy here, he's a bad boy, especially with the ladies. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's a clever little lad, and there he's a clever little lad himself. And this shows, there he is, Stanley Pottinger seated, sponsored by the Junior Chamber of Commerce. No, this was Student Government Day. So instantly he's like looking at like, oh, look, I could be in government. Oh, these are one of the spanking, extraordinary kids who looks at children's boobs. And that's exactly what people in government do. So maybe he should be in government too. And by this point, 1958. So this is before his dad dies. His dad dies in December 1958. This is as he's going. He's Wilbur Wright man. So Wilbur Wright is a school in Dayton, Ohio that he goes to, and he becomes like, he is everything. Look at this. Look at it. Here's some of Stan's activities. The 3.4 scholastic average of 4 points possible. Football co-captain and all-city quarterback. A letterman in track. President of the Junior Citizen Service Club. Chairman of the board of senior class. President of the National Honor Society. Voted outstanding senior by classmates. And if you go to other articles, there's even more and more. So he's obviously heading towards great things. He's obviously, and the Civitan, Junior Civitan International. This is the group that they're talking about, and they're described. This is one of the things he did. Junior Civitan. I can't say it. It's one of those words you can't say. Yeah, whatever. Don't make me look bad. Is a service program for youth tailored specifically for training young people to become builders of good citizenship in the home, school, and nation. Its purpose is to develop initiatives and leadership in order to encourage youth to live fuller and rich. Basically, it's another one of these federal youth programs targeting youth after World War II, which of course we're pretty important. So here you go. Again, according to John Stanley Pottinger, freshman at Harvard. So Stanley Pottinger at this point is being mentioned as a freshman in Harvard, and this is just before the ailing Pottinger is about to go in to have Pottinger Senior is about to go in and have his heart surgery and die. So this is the mention that John Stanley Pottinger is a freshman at Harvard by this point, and this is a really important point in Harvard history. This is a point where multiple members. It's a Muckler fresh moment.
Well, I understand from your article that he didn't intend to go to Harvard, Johnny.
No, he meant to. I can't remember what it is. The Burrs or somewhere like that. I can't remember what. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, he's meant to go somewhere else. Now, this is another event, and I don't like to give this away too much. But this is something where there is an investigation to be had here because I know other information. And in the second article, you'll understand other things that are going on at the same time in Harvard. At this specific time, John Stanley Pottinger's future long-term CIA girlfriend is based in Harvard and is just being funded by her first CIA project. So that's happening as John Stanley Pottinger is going into Harvard, and Harvard is just rife at this point with CFR, CIA aligned programs that are targeting the young. So he's already at the center of power. This is where Kissinger's running his international seminar where people like Klaus Schwab and others are being recruited as well. So this is a center of power. And, he talks about his being at Harvard. They put him forward. If Harvard's going to put forward a young guy to speak in a newspaper, then they put forward someone like John Stanley Pottinger. And Dayton Daily News were really proud of him. This is when Dayton's sons, and this is after his father's death. And there's a little quote, a little thing saying, meeting students from all over America and the world is counted among Stanley Pottinger's memorable first-term experiences at Harvard, where he will major in government. Eventually he'll do law as well and go practicing into law, but then into government. He has taken 5 subjects: astronomy, English, logic and rhetoric, French, government, and general humanities, of course.
They don't list out detail with this guy, do they?
No, they don't.
It's a perfect bill of health.
Extremely interesting that they don't. Extremely, because most people, they do. 4 hours a day is suggested as a reasonable study time, but I haven't hit the stride as yet. When I have a paper due, I'm often up until 3 a.m., Pottinger said. It was an impressive experience to attend lectures by the same professors who had written his textbooks. My government lecturer drafted the Weimar Republic's constitution, and another is a government budget advisor. This is really important. Harvard is just like the center of power. It really is. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, they all have these different, different things that they do that help create the power. But Harvard has a very special place in the center of that as being the face of future government, really. And I'm sure that will come. I
like the way he had like a gleaming review, but then when he opened his own mouth, he revealed, when I got a paper due, I'm up till like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
When I got last minute.
Well, I got a paper due. I'm shitting myself.
Oh, yeah.
I employ Afghanis to do my homework for me. Oh, I should have said that. No, anyway. So here you go. This is an example of some of the stuff he did. So the following year, got light up a blunt, sorry. Stanley Pottinger of Dayton has been appointed to a special committee of Harvard Student Council to consider all aspects of the athletic program. So even within Harvard, he's being given again. He's the board of the board. He's the chairman of chairmans. He's the all-star this, all-star that. He's one of those guys. And he's obviously, these people get noted. But now we're going to change tack. We're gonna start talking about his brother, because his slightly older brother is following. I know. I love these.
You'd be really gutted, wouldn't you? Oh, I got my face in the paper in my bridal dress next to a big onion.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a misprint, it could be on her head.
You can really smell the photo.
Yeah. I read best. That's not what you want next to your head. I read best.
Yeah, with chlorophyll. Get your bride today with chlorophyll. Oh no, that's chloroform. Anyway, so
close enough.
But close enough. So see, this is announcing.
It's an easy mistake to make.
Yeah. Easy mistake to make. We're back in the Dayton Daily News. we've gone back a couple of years because I want to introduce you to a name here. Because here, Brent Pottinger vows spoken in Linden Avenue Church. And this is in a double ring ceremony, Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Miss Martha Jean Brent and David Forbes Pottinger exchanged wedding vows. So this is the marriage of David Forbes Pottinger and his wife. And we're about to learn about David Forbes Pottinger, hence the first article being called The Pottinger Identity. Because here you go. This is beautiful. I mean, these covers are fantastic. This is, again, look, I love going around in newspapers. This is Dayton Daily News, August the 2nd, 1962. Front page news in Dayton. Police launch all-out search for City Commissioner Pottinger. So he's followed in the footsteps of his father. Foul play feared. Car, one shoe found. So they find his shoe, a bloody shirt, a couple of beer cans from the beer that he bought in the garage nearby. It's really interesting, actually. He goes into this garage. He goes, so David Forbes Pottinger, he goes to a city commissioner's meeting, this guy. And he sits in on this meeting. Then after the meeting, it finishes about 10:30. At 11 o'clock, he drives to a store, buys 4 beers. I think it's a pack of 4. Goes outside, and he has a couple of beers. Now, the evidence given is that he goes in to buy beer at 11 p.m. and he leaves the shop about midnight. So obviously, you're saying, why was he shopping for an hour? Like, obviously things don't add up straight away. Yeah, a large. There was so many beers. They had to choose one from each of the 4 celebs that were on offer, and I just didn't know which one to choose. See, because anyway,
all craft. Craft.
They don't have craft back then. No, it's all craft back then. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway,
they
so he
just had like one beer.
They find his bloody shirt and his shoe and his car abandoned in the nighttime. By the nighttime here, look at his poor wife. There she is. We saw her in a bride. Mrs. Martha Pottinger waits for news. She kept calm through the night. Yeah, now she's slicing onions and chloroforming boys. I mean chlorophyll. What? Anyway, so we're working on the assumption violence was committed, said Detective Sergeant James H. Picard. So obviously they've got Jean-Luc Picard on the case already. Now they got these guys who are expecting that there's been some form of violence, and here's John Stanley Pottinger. Look, they're looking. He's putting his fingerprints on his brother's white T-shirt that's going to be sniffed by a pack of hounds, and they're going to go on a hunt for his dead body. Investigators turned up a white T-shirt lying on the street near where Pottinger's car was found. Sergeant Picard said the shirt was the same size and brand as Pottinger wore. Pottinger's brother, however, said he did not believe the shirt belonged to Pottinger.
He's got a smile on his face, the guy, as well. He's like, as if he's saying to him, feel that fabric, feel the quality of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's proper cotton.
proper cotton. Proper cotton.
You can feel the quality.
And there'll be proper cotton jokes to be made when I tell you who he ran off with. Anyway, Pottinger's brother, Stanley, said the young commissioner may have been carrying $2,100 dollars to close a deal on a house, yeah? So this is money to close a deal on a house. That changes later. That changes. A lot of this story changes later. And it's very interesting, isn't it? He goes missing and everybody's excited. It makes all of the papers, every paper has it. Dayton man going missing, and it mentions Stanley Pottinger. Stanley Pottinger, a brother, missing commissioner, says it's 2,300 here rather than 2,100. Pottinger, who was elected city commissioner last November, left the commission meeting at 11 p.m. Wednesday. Left it, went across, got beer, left the place at 12 and disappeared. And it is more commissioner's wife waiting. Yeah, there you go. That's Khrushchev there, and someone who looks like Khrushchev, I think.
I was about to say, I mean, spot the difference there.
In fact, they printed it twice. Wife waiting. Why is she waiting?
Oh no, they're the same one. They're the same. Yeah, that is Nikita. I was like, no, that can't be 2 different people. No, it's Nikita Khrushchev, isn't it?
It's kind of weird because it's just like one's a bit more of a close up. and he's
Yeah.
So that's kind of weirding me out.
So it says, his wife talks about, so David Pottinger's wife says, I can't think of a time where Dave didn't come home straight from the commission meeting, she told reporters. And this is Eleanor Chittenden is his mother, who waited. She waited until 3 a.m., she said, before calling Pottinger's mother. That's what the girlfriend did. Mrs. Eleanor, or the wife, Mrs. Eleanor Chittenden. Chittenden and Stanley Pottinger, 22, brother of the commissioner, came immediately to David Pottinger's home. At 5 a.m., Stanley called the police. So they instantly call the police, and there's a hunt out for Pottinger. It makes all of the local newspapers. And then guess what happens? Couple of days later, we're in the Journal Herald of Dayton, Ohio, a couple of days later, and Pottinger babysitter missing since yesterday, leaves note. Message from girl says she'll write. I like that. I'll write you, mother.
Quite dismissive. She'll write.
Yeah. Not connected to disappearance of commissioner, family says. So obviously straight away people are saying, wait a minute, this girl goes missing. They left no stone unturned. They're talking about David Pottinger's look at the search for David Pottinger. East End search for traces of missing city commissioner David Pottinger. Yesterday included wells, the riverbank, wooded areas, meadowlands, and pits like the one municipal judge Cecil Edwards and his Boy Scouts are searching here. In fact, 300 Boy Scouts were set out to comb the area. There you go. So Scouts comb area of East Dayton, 300 Boy Scouts in futile day-long search. They can't find him. Where is he? Well, he's not with Cheryl Vanderveil, is he? Because she's his babysitter, and that would be inappropriate.
It's like no stone left unturned. We're going to get the absolute best on the job.
Yeah,
call the Scouts.
Yeah, call the Scouts, and well, actually, there's one stone over there. That stone over there has got this babysitter marked on it. No, we won't turn that stone over. Let's not look over there. No, the Scouts can't handle babysitters. They're just too sexy. Right. Anyway, okay. So 2 days on from that, relatives waiting, hoping, praying, but no word. And there you go. There's more. The Daily News staff writer are writing about something very interesting. Watching, waiting, praying. That is how the mother, Sherry Vanderveil, the missing 17-year-old babysitter for David Pottinger's family, described her vigil today. And for the wife, mother, and brother, the young city commissioner who vanished last Thursday, the story was much the same. We've heard nothing, said Sylvan Vanderveil, Sherry's mother said. It's just a vigil. We're waiting, that's all. Stanley Pottinger, the commissioner's brother, scotched rumours that the family had heard from Dave. I wish it were true, he said. We've heard no word or idea of what's happened to him, but we're still optimistic. It's difficult to feel that way under the circumstances, but we're trying to keep our hopes up and etc., etc. So there's some questions that Vanderveil and this girl and Pottinger, David Pottinger, go missing at the same time. And there doesn't seem to be anything now. The two in every article, the two cases are basically combined together in the same article. So it mentions Sherry in this and David in this, and it's again nothing was found when they went and looked in different places. You know, Pottinger, Cheryl met often, Grundish claims. So we're 5 days after the missing, a schoolgirl goes missing, or 3 days after the schoolgirl goes missing, and they're reporting that Pottinger met his babysitter often. Okay. Yes. Oh, yes. Stanley, brother of the missing commissioner, promptly branded the statement a lie and added, we won't dignify these lies by talking about them. And what are the lies? Well, the lies are her friends, Cheryl Vanderville's friends, and other witnesses said that he had been having a relationship with this schoolgirl for about a year, I think it was, and he had been meeting her at the Silver and Crystal Lakes areas in northeast of the city. That later comes up. But Stanley Pottinger, when these girls say, yeah, she had been meeting him for ages and stuff, calls all of the people saying she's run off with his brother. He calls them all liars, which is, of course, ironic, seeing as eventually that's kind of like he'd be on the side of the victims in a very similar case. Because here, David Forbes Pottinger has actually done something very naughty, you know. He's trafficked a girl across state lines for sex, an underage girl, quite similar to what Jeffrey Epstein did himself, which the irony must be, of course, noted. And the two Pottinger relatives interviewed by police. So by the time it got round as well to the 8th of August, they were already, we go back a little bit, but they were already questioning Stanley Pottinger and the father, his stepfather, about David Pottinger's disappearance, but none of it's mentioned. And then here you go, 17th of September. So over a month and a half later, tells of a beating. The Akron Beacon Journal reports missing Dayton official found in a Tennessee ditch. And David F. Pottinger, missing Dayton official, city commissioner, was found in a muddy ditch here today. He told a tale of being beaten by 3 men in an investigation of gambling and prostitution he had been conducting. So here he is. David Pottinger makes up a story. He says that, and this is amazing. He's such a douchebag. He really is, really one of the stupidest people around, because he makes up a story that he has amnesia, but he can remember all of the important things that he wants you to know. So now there's not many times where that happens.
Amnesia.
Yeah, people don't see through it. Pottinger found David F. Pottinger, Dayton, Ohio, city commissioner, member missing since July 31st, convalesces in Knoxville, Tennessee, after being found lying in a ditch. Just found lying in a ditch. Police say he is an apparent amnesia victim. An amnesia victim, like amnesia. Yeah, amnesia goes around striking.
Just crept up on me and mugged me.
It's amazing. So again, there's other places. David Pottinger is surprised to learn his babysitter had left home. Of course he is. What? They're bringing him out of the ditch, and they're like, "You heard about Sherry Vanderville?" And he's like, "Oh, what? What's happened to her? Help me up further. I've got a bump on my head." They find him with a bump on his head, and he claims he had been dragged from his car. He's saying Pottinger said that the last thing he remembers was being beaten by 3 men who, he said, dragged him from his car in a warehouse district near his home in Dayton. And then he wakes up in a ditch in Tennessee a month and a half later. I mean, it's insane to like put that forward.
Concussion.
Yeah. And some teleportation.
Amazing. Pottinger said a gambling scandal in Dayton prompted him to begin the private and official investigation into alleged rackets, just like he's suddenly a policeman now. I'm a city commissioner. I took it upon myself to unveil. He went to the FBI and was told he needed evidence. Now, this is a reoccurring theme. This will come up in the third one. People who say they went to the FBI, but not sure they did. The FBI record keeping is so bad that they use the excuse that there's no records to prove that there was a record. It's very bizarre. And so, again, this is a story that's going around all over the place. I won't read through it, but there you go. There's his wife. And there's a babysitter.
It leaves you breathless.
Yeah, it leaves you breathless, speechless. Anyway, Pottinger returns to Dayton. So he's then picked up in a hired van by the family. Now, I'm going to really skip through this. Pottinger missing, police to question Dayton commissioner soon. So he'd been missing for 45 days, found in a ditch, of course, and people asking loads of questions. And he takes some neurological tests as well. Doctors check for nervous disorder. A lot of the doctors say there's little objective evidence, the doctor continued, that he has had amnesia. But this would be true in many such cases. That amnesia. Yeah, well, that amnesia makes victims of us all.
It's not kidnapping. You don't remember it.
Yeah. That is something I'm going to use as a chat apply. Anyway, okay. The Daily Advocate says former Dayton official undergoes exams. Again, they're examining him. So this is all evidence just to show that the press are reporting this at the time. And police get approval to talk to Pottinger in hospital. So obviously they're like very interested in speaking with the guy.
Hang on a second. Go up. The one next to it. What a headline.
Ice cream melts, so he speeds. That one.
Ice cream melts, so he speeds.
I know. Oh man, this is why I mean, diving through newspaper archives is a wonderful thing.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. It's a the faster you drive, the quicker it melts. What are you meant to do? You drive slowly, it melts faster too. Anyway, Cheryl admits staying with official.
Like the movie Speed, but with ice cream.
I like it, except Keanu Reeves is covered in ice cream and has a bomb up his butt, so I'm not sure about that. Here we are in the Kansas City Star, and it's the 1st of October, 1962, and we're nearly at the end of David Pottinger's story, and about to get back to Stanley Pottinger. And here we go. It is unveiled over the next few days from the 1st of October. Cheryl gets home. Cheryl Vanderville, they try and track her down. She turns out to be in New York. They send her to go stay with some family in Washington for a bit. Then she comes back to Dayton, and then she gets put into hiding for a little bit because she's a bit scared because, of course, she's about to tell the truth, and she's about to admit that she went off with David F. Pottinger, that he faked his own disappearance, and they went sailing around the place in a boat that he bought with the money. He had loaned some extra money on top of the money that he had taken, the $2,100 or $300 he had taken. He'd also loaned $3,500 beforehand, bought a boat and sailed around the place and sold the boat afterwards. So that's what they had been doing. He had been basically trafficking her across multiple state lines for sex. And so he's arrested. And this is the Akron Beacon Journal stating that Pottinger will escape the Mann Act, which is a white slavery act, so trafficking act, that was used back then to prosecute people for trafficking girls for sex across state lines. But straight away, as soon as they start investigating, they're like, oh no, we won't charge him. Like they say, look up here, there is of course a technical violation of the Mann Act if the girl's statement is true, that she was with Pottinger for 40-some days in his absence, and if that were together and that they were together in various states at various times. There's a technical violation. What, you mean he broke the law? Yeah, it's a technical violation, though, isn't it? Every breaking of every law is a technical violation. That is what breaking the law is. So they're obviously already like, oh, we don't want him to spend a year inside, and this looks bad. So future looks bleak for ex-Dayton aide is the next one 3 days later, where Pottinger admits attack, amnesia, stories are false, and he does it. He admits it out loud. He has to by this point. Wow. That's not him next to him. I wouldn't be surprised. You could just say,
I don't remember this.
What was I doing here? I do not know. Who am I? I don't know. Oh, yes, I do. I knew all along. What am I saying? His career is being reported as over, and it is true. It is over. I'm gonna take you. I am gonna give you guys a couple of hints of where his career goes after this. He gets charged. He gets like a slap on the wrist. Plea entered for Pottinger. So pleaded innocent to a 3-count charge of acting in a manner tending to cause a delinquency involving the Pottinger babysitter who disappeared with him. Eventually, plea entered for, he claims innocent, and then eventually he says he's guilty as well. They say he's okay for trial. Pottinger goes to 6 weeks in court, and then he enters no contest to the plea. So he reverses his plea and says no. They've obviously worked out something. So I think his brother would have been in the background here as well, because even though he's just he's by this point he's first year law, so he's been at Harvard for 4 years. I'm pretty positive that Stanley Pottinger would be involved in this part. But that's basically coming to the end there of the Pottinger. So they failed to indict him, return any indictment against the Dayton ex-city commissioner on charges that he used a false name to obtain an automobile title. So there's little tiny other technical violations they were trying to. And then David Pottinger and family moved to Florida. So then he moved to Florida, and he starts. Then
he grew hair.
No, I wish he probably did actually. He probably had nice long hair by this point, but I wish that he had not become a sailing instructor. I wish he hadn't, because by 1963, he's only just left. His family's only just left. Dayton Daily News are reporting that Pottinger skippered Meyer schooner because he's taking some people around in their yacht, and he ends up the boat owners, Mr. and Mrs. Russell Boaz, blamed the incident on misplaced buoys. But I bet you that's what it's a misplaced buoy. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so and that's the end of David Pottinger. This is John, and we're now going to John Stanley Pottinger, J. Stanley Pottinger, and this is Harvard in 1962. So this is him getting his first degree and then going on to study law.
So nothing happened to him, even though he said, I had amnesia, but then down the line he was like, oh, I actually didn't. I made that up. He still got away with it.
Yeah,
he got away with nearly every. I think he got a slap on the wrist and a fine. Basically,
his father was part of Masonic Lodge, so
yeah, I know, and he was probably
did he? He played it terribly, like the worst he could.
Yeah.
He still just got let off.
Yeah, completely amazing that these people exist, and we're going to skip through a bit of this to get to the next part, because this is going to be interesting. But a lot of the these details can also be found. And John Stanley Pottinger's papers, like not all of these details I just talked about his brother, but the details I'll talk about, some of the base details, not the actual real specifics that show what they've been up to. A lot of what he was doing can be seen from this, which is this is a Gerald Ford Presidential Library Museum, which shows the J. Stanley Pottinger papers that are available from when he was in office. So he graduates, like I say, in 1962 in Harvard University, graduates Harvard Law in 1965, and then he works for general counsel of Broad, Curry, and Schultz in San Francisco, California. Now, officially, apparently, only tries one case in that whole time. It's very suspicious that you'd spend 4 years somewhere and only try one case. But that was something that you see a lot from people who went into Nixon and other administrations afterwards that were legal. They were usually out of college, tried one case, and then brought straight into government. So my thought is that they're probably trained through university by someone like the CIA, an entity like the CIA, and then it just gives them a little bit of credibility that they're put up in front as like one case and then moved on. And this is something that comes up in the next article will be the different people who were involved in another one of his legal practices later on, legal firms later on, and how many of those people had only actually just ever tried one case before they entered into government, where some of them had been. And you can see his career here is interesting. You know, it's 1969, 1970, he's entering into government. This is Nixon administration. By 1969, 1970, 1973, he's in the Nixon administration. By 1973, 1977, he's in the Gerald Ford administration. 1977, he's classed as a special assistant to the Attorney General because he hasn't finished covering up Watergate. And he needs to finish covering up Watergate. So he asked for special permission to be allowed on to stay on under Jimmy Carter's administration so he could continue covering up Watergate. Then we'll get onto that probably in the second one, I think that is. And of course, then you see, and I should show you a quick idea of what his whole career looked like. Supposedly 1977, after he's a special attorney, he goes to work as an attorney in Washington DC, and amazing cases, really interesting cases. Represents Meade against Occidental Petroleum. Occidental Petroleum's head was Armand Hammer, who's an extremely interesting. Around this time, Pottinger tells of a story where Armand Hammer's in a Russian hotel room in his underwear, being held by members of the KGB and stuff, and there's all sorts of interesting collusion and stuff. But he claims he was an attorney until 1981, and then he's an investment banker in New York City. Now, investment banker, my asshole, I can show you what he is, but that'll be for the next one. And the third one.
Investment.
Yeah. Oh, yes, he
I
did.
did one of everything.
He did work.
One case, one investment. Then, like, you can just call yourself that thing.
Yeah, and
I was a plumber. I fixed one pipe.
Mm-hmm. But I feel kind of like that sometimes. Like I worked in here or there. I do feel a little bit like that, but it does make you an expert, and he does claim to be an expert in most things. So investment bank until 87, trustee of Lawyers Committee on Rights in 87, 87 United Nations Association advisor. This I've never found any information about. I can't find any information about this project. So this is a project that seems very secretive. And at the same year, he's also a consultant for the Rockefeller Foundation. So obviously a nice guy. Director, National Alliance for Breast Cancer Organizations, and president of Barnstorm Books, as he becomes an author of several works of best-selling fiction. I added to best-selling, but it's true. It gives you a little rundown in these presidential libraries, but of course it doesn't tell you the truth about who he was. And the truth about who he was is hard to understand. By 1970, he basically he's working for between 1960, what was it, 67 and 70, or 64 and 79. Well, anyway, he's working this legal company he runs one case with is Broad, Curry and Schultz, and they're an interesting one to follow around, but it's good to understand who they are. But he's also by 1967 he's also part of the Republican Party infrastructure. So here they mention Republicans have an abundance of likely entries to go against Myers in 1968, including John Mack, attorney banker and campaign coordinator, GOP, County Central Committee, J. Stanley Pottinger, lawyer and County Committee Counsel. So he's already County Committee Counsel for the Republicans. And this is why, of course, he can get his place in the administration, but also his friends are all the Republican Party grandees eventually. So you'll start to understand that one of his best friends is George H.W. Bush, and he eventually becomes the head of the CIA and is CIA by this point. So that needs to be noted a little bit. And let me just see. Ground rules for recounting. So there's some recounts about Republican Party stuff, I think. And there you go. This is where he enters into government. 1970, is skipping through some of this. J. Stanley Pottinger, 30-year-old government attorney. So at this point, for 1 year, he's been what's classed as a government attorney. Was named today as the Chief of Department of Health, Education and Welfare Civil Rights Division. During the peak of the civil rights movement, they make Stanley Pottinger, who's tried one case, the head of the civil rights movement. That seems like a big, and Leon Panetta has to stand down. And Leon Panetta, it said that basically he moved too quickly. The Nixon administration and Kissinger and the like didn't like how fast he was moving, so they installed J. Stanley Pottinger around. And this gets reported all over the place, including the New York Times, of course. So here again shows some about Pottinger being put in place. Mr. Pottinger, who has been a regional attorney in San Francisco for HE&W since December, was in Washington today, but declined to discuss his new job until he had a time to evaluate it. And evaluate it, he did. And he vows wide integration, he says. He comes along. He's a class as a Nixon aide by this point. And as you see, there's lots of stuff. I'm skipping through this because this is all basically the same stuff. And this is a less interest in the first couple of years. Stanley Pottinger is in the Health, Education and Welfare Department under Richard Nixon. Is not necessarily the most exciting stuff happening. He kind of like, with all of these things, they're finding their feet. Let me see. Nixon main model aid on schools. Right. Sorry, I'm just checking to see if I need to go through. I'm going to skip some of these. Straight in current quotes. Ooh, this is interesting. For Associated Press, we're in the Indiana Evening Gazette here from 1972, and they're quoting people. Yeah, oh, this is interesting. So this is about how basically they worked out that when Stanley Pottinger gets put in charge of desegregating schools, for some reason, all the actions they commit seem to actually lead to more segregations in school. So everything they do, and they can't work out why. So that's a quote. But then come the controversies. So he's finding his place for the first 3 years, and here we go. Now we're getting up to it. I mean, we're getting to the end of this presentation now, and we're going to go through the more big events. These are the big events. Just start the big events that relate to Stanley Pottinger. You'll start to eventually see that Stanley Pottinger is a key man in creating narratives, stories, in covering up details, in legally making sure that compliance by the state is covered so that they can hide any information that may not be good legally for them later on. He's really the cover-up guy. He's a cleanup crew. And the certain events that happened during the 70s while he's in power, of course, he's put in charge of in some way. One of them is the Terror at Wounded Knee, which is an Indian reservation, was the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, where basically a standoff between a really corrupt official who and a group called AIM came against each other, and it led to a big standoff, load of protests. It actually led to some shootings and stuff, and there's special laws under Native American land, which made it really complicated. And they called in John Stanley Pottinger to deal with this, and basically he made threats against all of the protesters, said that they were going to, they couldn't see any other lines of inquiry possible, and they were going to basically, that it was all going to get violent. And then the next 2 years, the government put into action a campaign of harassing the people who were involved in Wounded Knee and who were involved in AIM and other things. And this was really, really dirty games that they dirty tricks that they pulled. And here you see John Stanley Pottinger is really involved in this. On March the 12th, Assistant U.S. Attorney General John Stanley Pottinger announced the convening of a special grand jury to investigate violence at the reservation. But this would all go on favor for the other side rather than for the protesters. This was about the Nixon man stamping down his authority on stuff. And in the same year, you've got the grand jury being called for the Kent State massacre. Now, Kent State was another one. Again, protesters out on the front of the lawns of a government, and it was actually in Kent State University. They were protesting against the government, and a load of National Guard guys shot a load of people and killed a load of people. And loads of people said, oh, we heard that you fired on us. You were ordered to fire on us. It's illegal killing. And John Stanley Pottinger is involved. He's the main guy involved in organizing the indictment and eventually finding a clean bill of health for the government. This is what he does all the time. He's put involved. He says, we'll find it. This action does not mean that we have made a decision to seek indictments, said Assistant Attorney General John Stanley Pottinger. Yeah, we're indicting, but we're not necessarily indicting. Yes, we're to put forward a case, but we're not necessarily indicting. It's very much like this. Pottinger's the man who covers
Jim will fix it. Bring in Pottinger and he'll control the narrative. He'll sort out all the problems. Completely. We'll get out with our feet clean and the lot.
So we're here in New York Times.
Hands clean.
Yeah, hands feet and hands, everything. Willie's clean, all of it. New York Times.
He's like Mr. Clean. Mr. Clean.
Yeah. He is, and this will be obvious to you as we go through this. When we get to the third one, by the third one, you'll be like, "My God, there will have to be a movie made about him eventually. There will have to be. He's like what a James Bond character would look like in real life. He is.
Yeah. Is this why you named the series after the Bourne Identity?
Very much so. There's a couple of secrets to that. It went well because of David Forbes Pottinger's identity being missing for the first one. But basically it's about someone who you don't really know what his role is. And as you find out, you realize he was involved with the most sinister people. That's kind of the flow of it. But each one of them have a point to that why they match up. The New York Times reporting in 1974 about Kent State Massacre, sorry. Report the U.S. jury indicts 8 in campus deaths. So they indicted 8. They did indict them. 1 president and 7 former members of the Guard charged in May 4th, 1970 killings. No conspiracy found in big capital letters.
Give up. Look the other way. There's no conspiracy found.
Yeah, no conspiracy found. And who's at the head of mopping this all up but J. Stanley Pottinger? He's the main man for these sort of things. He's Assistant Attorney General John Stanley Pottinger, who's in charge of Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, said that the grand jury would not be discharged and could be reconvened to hear further evidence. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Because in 2007, it was a bit too late to reconvene for the new evidence. And you say new evidence, but why couldn't evidence be found earlier? And survivors of the 1970 confrontation say audio tape has an order for the guardsman to fire. And Stanley Pottinger comments on this in 2007, saying that he doubts anything was overlooked at the time. Of course, but it found a clean bill of health for the government, the same as he had done with Wounded Knee. Was kind of like be on the government side, threaten, and then use government powers to harass the people outside to force them to stop protesting. That's two interesting things. And he's now by 1973, people are taking note of him.
Great. Proud of his job, sure of himself.
Yeah, and there's some interesting. There he is. There's looking into the distance.
Sometimes loses his memory.
There's a really, really good line. I wonder if it's in here. Plushoff is the brilliant line about here you go. As an upper level Nixon administration official, he projects his stereotype. His sideburns are just the right length. His suits are an imaginative blue or grey. What's
just the right length?
Yeah, I know. His voice exudes self-confidence without becoming overbearing. But listen to what he says instead of how he says it, and the stereotypes begin to crumble. And that's very much true, because he's not working in the way that you think he's working.
His sideburns are mesmerizing. They're not short. They're not too long. They're not very little sideburns either. They're just the right length.
We need a new name. They're pot burns. They're Stan Burns or something. I don't know. But he's obviously getting lots of notes. By 1973, Potty Burns. Let's call him Potty Burns. Potty face. Anyway, he's by this point he's also met his future CIA lovey, who we'll cover in the second one. He's met her and he's actually dating her by this point, so he's already got links to CIA. Now here we go, this is interesting. Oh my god, so interesting. Back in the New York Times, I like going to New York Times seems to be where they publicize the things that they're going to get rid, that they're going to cover up, like, oh, this person's covering up this person, but they say it in other words. And here John Stanley Pottinger is involved. What's he involved in? Bork meets Aid, Washington. So Robert H. Bork, as acting attorney general, spent the first morning head of a stunned Justice Department discussing the future of the Watergate prosecutions. So, what is this? John Stanley Pottinger is suddenly discussing the future of the Watergate prosecutions. He seems like he's picked up a job now. He's picked up a reoccurring theme. And he again... whether or not it is John Stanley Pottinger quote. Oh man, that went quickly. And it skipped across the other part of the page. You bastards. There's a John Stanley Pottinger quote saying we have a whale of a load of power and we're prepared to use it if necessary. And that's what he said about discrimination and civil rights stuff. Yeah, they used their power in certain ways to target certain people. And so this was obviously, I mean, there's loads of stuff going on while he's in government, while he's in administration due to civil rights. There's the Boston is running battles as schools start, and he's like essential to looking over all of that and seeing if the government is doing the right thing. And of course, the government's always doing the right thing by Stan. He says at first, he's always saying, oh no, the government will be checked on because they're probably not doing the right thing. And then later on, he's like, oh, the government did nothing wrong and they did all of the right thing. It's like they say, look, I'm going to be a proper critic, and then he does the critique, and then he says, oh well, I don't need to be a proper critic anymore. There you go. And here we are, New York Times again. And what's this? This is really important within the article too. Study of Dr. King's death finds no link to the FBI. So we're entering we're coming up to the last two sections that are in this first article. As you see, it's like full of stuff. It's full of it's a good way to get to know Stan Pottinger, and a good way to go forward. It's going to get crazy, the next ones, but this is extremely crazy in itself. Look. So in 1976, they're finding that there's no link to the FBI to Martin Luther King's death. And Ray is definitely, James Earl Ray is definitely the person who shot him and all of this. But in actual fact, we now know that the investigation that eventually, this investigation here that's happening, eventually gets signed off by who? Who decides that Martin Luther King and the FBI had nothing to do with Martin Luther King's assassination, but John Stanley Pottinger. So these are some of the biggest events. He's Watergate, Kent State Massacre, the standoff at Wounded Knee, the assassination of Martin Luther King. All goes to one guy to be the guy to sort out that job, the go-to guy already formed. He's only been in government. He's only been working in the Nixon administration rather than government. I think you'd say that, in the Nixon administration for 6 years. He's only been there for 6 years, and he's now in charge. And he's a kid relatively to these guys, and he's in charge of some of the biggest things. And what do we know about Martin Luther King? Well, we know that Martin Luther King was targeted by such things as this. This is the infamous suicide letter, which tries to convince Martin Luther King to commit suicide. This was FBI at its best, trying to force someone who was not on their side to end their life so they didn't have to deal with them. And there's loads of memos on this. If you go within the article, all of what you're looking here and more, the sources are available within the article. Now, like on the newspaper site, you'd need a subscription or whatnot. But if you actually contact me, anybody listening, if you want to see that article and you don't want to look for all of this, tell me which article it is. I'll download it and send it to you, because, you know, it's really important to understand what is being said and who's involved and where the source material is when you're coming across something like this, because I want everybody to see how transparent this investigation is. And this is a fantastic, this document that's linked within the article about the suicide letter basically shows you all of the redacted and secret documents at the time, showing that they were targeting Martin Luther King. Go on.
Sorry. So when you say suicide letter, you're actually referring to the letter trying to persuade him to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Kind of funny.
So it's not, it's not a suicide
letter. It's like a letter going, commit suicide, go on.
Yeah, no, officially you got to call that a suicide note. It's only a note. You don't class. It's not a letter, because you don't put your address at the top.
You're not used to having suicide letters where it's like, you know, go on, you might as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
he may as well.
Don't love you that much.
Yeah.
Way out.
What are you? You're not even white, so it's not even worth it, is it? Oh.
I mean, being a martyr, you know, it's not a bad deal.
You've had good innings, Martin. You've had good innings.
Think about it. Martin Martyr. You love it. It rings. Mark. But this is here. You can go and you can look up through all of the documentation. The FBI and other agencies who were all collecting information. Look at the subject: Martin Luther King Jr. Security matters. Communist. You know, they just can't stop themselves. They just can't.
The Russians.
Yeah, they were addicted back then. And here we go. We're coming to the end. We're coming to the end of this part, because coming up to the end of his time in Nixon administration was 1970. He officially leaves power in mid-1977. He's, like I might have said to you off camera earlier or on camera, I can't remember, I'll say it again. He was allowed to stay on to finish covering up the Watergate investigation, to finish signing off the Watergate investigation. He asked for special permission to remain on under the Jimmy Carter administration. So he became a special advisor during 1977 to do that. Something happened in 1976 that was much more important, and includes these guys here, really. Kissinger, of course, included in everything, especially when he was part of Nixon administration that was very close, of course, with the CIA, and the CIA overthrew Allende and installed Pinochet into power. That led to a number of things happening that we'll look at here. But the Salvador Allende, who got deposed during the CIA coup of Chile, an open coup, you know, they made it clear that they were doing it at the time. It was a really rare one. It seemed like obvious it was the CIA, and everybody knew it was the CIA who did it. So it was a very open coup. And Orlando Letelier had been, at one point, he'd been the foreign minister for Allende, and he had been other roles as well. So he was very important. And he went into exile in America once Allende was assassinated, murdered, and Pinochet was put into power. And here, this story talks about Orlando Letelier, because Orlando Letelier, who goes, let's read it. Orlando Letelier was the Chilean ambassador to the United States and the Minister of Foreign Affairs under President Salvador Allende. After the 1973 coup, Letelier moved to Washington, D.C. and became senior fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. He was assassinated in Washington, D.C. on Embassy Row in September the 21st, 1976. They set the bomb off as his car rolled past the Chilean embassy. That's how much of a message was sent in the murder of Orlando Letelier in America. With no permission from the Americans, they assassinated Orlando Letelier. It's amazing. And it saw amazing scenes. As the New York Times reported the very next day, they show the bombed out car. And report that opponent of the Chilean junta slain in Washington by a bomb in his auto, and someone else was killed. There was other people killed in the back. A couple of, I think, one other person. Some other people were injured, if I remember correctly. And everybody kind of knew what it was about straight away. And the FBI were getting tips soon after. So, like a couple of days later, FBI gets tips in Letelier bombing case that high Chilean secret policeman flew to US last month. So this is a witness who saw someone they knew. So in the telephone interview, Mr. Wipfler said the Chilean source had identified the high-ranking officer of the DINA. DINA was the secret police, the Chilean secret police. Sorry, that's on the next line. Aboard a New York-bound Lufthansa flight, and notes it was accompanied by a woman and 4 men. Now, this was part of an operation. We're gonna. I'm going to explain a little bit. And here you go. There's more FBI communications here. This is about Operation Condor. And as it says here, Operation Condor is a code name for a collection, exchange, and storage of intelligence data concerning so-called leftist, communists, and Marxists, which was recently established between cooperating intelligence agencies in South America. So this included, I think, I'm not sure if Mexico, I can't remember if Mexico was in it, but it was like Chile, Argentina, Brazil, a couple others who were all involved in Operation Condor, and it was a joint effort against terrorists. But terrorists were anybody who opposed the prevailing power structure that were nearly all right wing. So all the terrorists were left wings. So wingers. So Orlando Letelier was seen as a terrorist, and this document explains what Operation Condor is. I explain it briefly within the article, but it's a very interesting operation. Basically allowed all of these different intelligence services to work together to assassinate a target or to do a certain operation, and because they were all working together, the target country, so say America or France or somewhere else where the assassination or the sanction, as they call it, happened, that country would find it hard to hold any one country to account. So they couldn't say, oh, if Chile did this, it wasn't the intelligence. It was because it was one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these. And it made it so muddy that no one wanted to bother. And that was proven through the murder of Orlando Letelier in Washington. That's exactly what happened. The Americans basically helped cover it up and helped hide it and helped keep it down for long enough. Guess who was head of doing such things? I think you can imagine.
Stan the man.
Mr. Stan the man. Well, not necessarily for coming up, but we'll talk about that very. Like I say, we're coming to the end of this presentation here, so we'll get a chance to talk about some things. And thanks to everybody for sitting through it. I know it's a long one. Here we have a part of that document I was reading. It's really important thing to understand. Operation Condor had 3 phases. The third, and I'm quoting from the article now, or from the document, a third and most secret phase of the Operation Condor involves the formation of special teams from member countries who are to travel anywhere in the world to non-member countries to carry out sanctions up to assassination against terrorists or supporters of terrorist organizations from Operation Condor member countries. For example, should a terrorist or a supporter of a terrorist organization from a member country of Operation Condor be located in a European country, a special team from Operation Condor would be dispatched to locate and surveil the target. When the location and surveillance operation has terminated, the second team from Operation Condor would be dispatched to carry out the actual sanction against the target. Special teams would be issued false documentation from member countries of Operation Condor and may be composed exclusively of individuals from one member nation of Operation Condor, or may be composed of a mixed group from various Operation Condor member nations. So
they love saying Operation Condor.
They do. It's very important that they say it as well, because they already know what's going on here. The FBI and the CIA already knew about Operation Condor, and it suited what they needed to do. And there was a lot happening. And as soon as the assassination happened, the whole place crapped themselves. And this is from a book I'm now going to give you a couple of excerpts, small excerpts from a book called Assassination on Embassy Row. One of the most important, but John Dingus, I think his name is. I don't want to call him Dingus, but I mean, I think that's his name. But this is really interesting. This is about the assassination of Orlando Letelier. And you will see Pottinger's name come up in this because, of course, Pottinger plays an extremely important role as his role merges slowly from government into intelligence. He starts to be more and more linked with intelligence during the end of his terms in administrations of the presidents, Nixon and Ford, respectively. And this line is pretty interesting. Propper was put in charge, Eugene Propper was put in charge of the investigation of Orlando Letelier. And on chapter 9, Assassination on Embassy Row, it explains Eugene Propper looking for the information about Operation Condor. And it says, by mid-afternoon, Propper began to realize that the murders had international overtones and the FBI would be involved because Letelier, former Chilean ambassador, came under special federal statute protecting diplomatic personnel. As he called professionals and friends in the government agencies around Washington and read reports as they came in, a bewildering cacophony of buzzwords began to engulf him. Communists, Allende, Marxist government, CIA role, military coup, concentration camps, torture, human rights, DINA, friendly intelligence services, IPS, left-wing think tank, comp simps, political assassination. This is that quote there. I think is really important to understand because loads of people who were within government in some way had zero clue about what was really going on at this point because there were so many operations run by intelligence services all over the place, not only in America, all over the world, and no one knew who was really behind them. So a lot of this, when they'd have to investigate, they'd be finding out for the first time. And what's really interesting,
it didn't really fit there, did it?
Hey?
It's like concentration camps,
Friendly.
but
Human rights.
Wow.
Friendly.
Yeah. But you get a feeling that's what they want to say. I'm on the strawberry milk. We're coming right near the end. This is the last bit I want to show you here. This is the last thing. And this is how Stanley Pottinger got involved. You see, Stanley Pottinger, he's still in his last year of government here, just finalizing covering up the Watergate break-ins, which will also be kind of skirted over in the next episode because he gets away with a lot, does Stanley Pottinger. But here he's called in by Eugene Propper when Eugene Propper is doing his investigation of the assassination of Orlando Letelier, and an opportunity shows itself. A big opportunity shows itself. And so I'm going to read this excerpt. I hope it's got enough. That this is, again, from Assassination on Embassy Row. On October the 4th, J. Stanley Pottinger, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, and Eugene Propper met with CIA Director George Bush and CIA General Counsel Anthony Lapham to hammer out a solution to the problem of CIA cooperation. Bush said the agency was willing to help if Pottinger and Propper could solve his problem about the executive order banning domestic intelligence gathering. In the course of their discussion of developments in the case, the subject to Scherer's discovery of Operation Condor came up. Bush said that if Attorney General Levy would write him a letter requesting that the CIA initiate an investigation of Operation Condor, they would have a solution to the quandary about CIA cooperation. The existence of international hit squad with the capability of operating in the United States turf, he said, was definitely a serious matter of national security within the realm of the CIA's mandate. He foresaw no legal problem in turning over the FBI, the byproducts of such CIA effort. Over the next few days, Pottinger arranged for the presidential order, and he and Propper ironed out the details of a just a CIA agreement for secret, circumscribed cooperation, domestic surveillance of American citizens. The CIA would provide relevant information from CIA files, but Justice could not use information in court unless it had independently obtained it from a separate source. In case the outcome of the investigation turned on a particular piece of CIA information or a CIA witness, the decision to use the information would be made by the president. And I tell you what, did they succeed? Did they succeed? Did they succeed? So what happened then? Well, J. Stanley Pottinger went and got the authorization for George Bush's CIA as head of the CIA, his friend, who you'll discover that they have lots of links, including within the Republican Party, and will include Stanley Pottinger making sure, being central in a coup that allows, a political coup that allows his friend George H.W. Bush to become vice president of the USA. And that's J. Stanley Pottinger's direct actions to create the October surprise, which turns the American election in 1980 towards Reagan and Bush, and means that his friend and the head of the CIA now sits in the second highest office, basically controlling a puppet like Reagan, who's pressurized on all sides by these people.
Yeah.
And in the next episode, in the next episode, in the next part of the series, the Pottinger supremacy, we'll be looking at Pottinger's entry into elite intelligence agency fuckery of the highest order. This man has been responsible for the biggest stuff, and when you take it into the when you when you rationalize it, assassination of Martin Luther King, signing that off. Later on, we know, and this I cover in the article. We know that the family then went eventually to James Earl Ray in prison and said, "Hey, did you kill my father?" Like that's what one of King's sons said, and he said, "No, I didn't. I didn't at all." And Ray seemed like he was a bit nuts, and the family believed him completely and had other evidence. So they took to court, and in court they took a certain person to court. It's weird how they've got to do it, but they basically admitted that the FBI had assassinated. In court, it was discovered that the FBI had assassinated Martin Luther King. So in that context, seeing that Pottinger's the one to cover up that sort of thing, when government fuckery again in Watergate, covering up that thing, he's got a special job. And that job, once he goes dark, once he leaves public office, he does so much more. And he changes the world. And this guy is there will be, I promise you, there will be a movie about him one day. And maybe it'll be one day soon, because this is a life that has been hidden from people, completely hidden. No one realizes there's one thread linking all of these cases together, and it's the most important piece. It's the person that decides what happens about that case. So we're ending this. Orlando Letelier has just been murdered. Pottinger has got the CIA the rights to surveil its own citizens, which is a massive. I mean, that's covering up things and then getting like domestic surveillance. Just unbelievable.
They had to wait 20 years more for 9/11, didn't they, to do that again? In terms of surveillance people, they had to wait a long time for that again.
There is a lot of that. There is a lot of that within American history.
It's like never let a good crisis go to waste. You know.
Yeah.
You always
indeed
want to get something more out of it in terms of taking people's freedoms away or increasing surveillance and anything else they can push forward.
So that's it. That's the first part. That'll lead you. This will lead us.
Resume.
Yeah,
ready,
isn't it? Yeah, and it's
we're
just going to
our lips with part 2.
You guys will of course see part 2 a little bit early, so I'll probably try and send that to you in probably about 4 or 5 days. part 3, maybe like we'll have to sit down and read it through together before we even do any of this, because it's like, understanding how long it's going to take to go through, I don't know, but it's one of the most fantastically interesting. It'll change this. What I explained to people, this is going to change not only the Epstein case fundamentally, it's going to change parts of American history. This is showing people that there's one person, that there's a conspirer. There's a conspirer who's been involved, who's the man to go to for all of this stuff. And still, where does his conspiring end today? Well, we see in the lack of justice. The man who starts in the Justice Department makes sure that we do not get justice. And that is the projection of the New World Order. The person they put in charge of justice is a person who will take justice away from us.
Away from people.
Mm-hmm. Everything inverted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There you go. That's all I have to say. And now I drink strawberry milk.
Schism out.
Yeah. Yeah, so over to you guys. Yeah.
Oh, well, I feel out of breath for you then. That was an impressive
brilliant
marathon of stuff to get through.
Brilliant.
I've really enjoyed all the newspaper clippings. It's just amazing to go back and look at everything.
Where you compile all this evidence, Johnny, man, the way you get it all together, just right.
It's really impressive, and it's very it's very old school in a sense, like just going through newspaper clippings. I could see a few things like, library there. It's like good old fashioned,
investigation.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that's what's missing in the world nowadays. That's what I realized that at one point. It's like people they want to come to their own conclusions. They've got their audience who have a certain amount of conclusions they come to anyway. They don't like to tackle certain subjects. So you end up with this narrowed, I'm going to use the evidence that then makes my argument fit the pieces. I did something different. I just use all the evidence I could possibly find. I just dragnet approach, just take all of the evidence, and then you can say at the end of it, you put in chronological order, you put a couple of sentences so that people understand why you're telling them this information, how it goes as a story. And suddenly I'm not writing that story. I'm really, truly reporting that story, journaling that story. That's what journaling is. Yeah, the story, all of the articles that I write, I don't make up the things that go inside them. That's what the wonder of having all this evidence. The evidence makes it up. And so it becomes a really easy process for me. My skill has to be in, yes, of course, forming, putting up online, finding out a way to reach people and all of that stuff, understanding what the evidence means, understanding the law, understanding all of those things. But also just knowing where to look and looking everywhere, trying to think outside the box of it, and also not leaving just the one situation lingered. There's always multiple questions where I've gone through about 10 different things with you there that are in one story. And each of those has their own tentacles and they have their own branches. And as I go through these stories as well, I find maybe another 10 stories that are potential that just linger in the background and they'll come around another time. So that's how my work kind of goes. I keep dragnetting information as much as possible, putting in order, giving it to people, and then people make up their own mind. In these, especially in these articles, I will say very little at the end about the information. The last one may be more than most. But then I will talk openly in podcasts and things about what I think about it. But I try and make it so that it's just a journal, man. It's all it is. Journalism. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. You're basically doing the job that journalists should be doing, but they can't because their hands are tied behind their back, and this kind of story would just never ever be allowed to go out there in the mainstream media.
If I was actually getting paid to write this, whoever would be paying me would be nuts. That's it. That's the case. I don't see that necessarily the journalists in the world are all terrible or anything, of course. Most of them, like you say, they're coerced, they're kind of like forced into writing in a certain way. The industry is like that. You know, it doesn't pay to do this, they've got to focus on this, or they've got to focus on that. But if you had someone who pays people for journalism and they paid for this, they would be mad because they'd make loads of enemies all around the place, and it'd probably be the start. I think articles like this can only exist on independent platforms that have a one-person control at the top. I say one-person control. You know, I'm happy to put anything up on my on Newspaste, but for me, it's like my articles. I'm completely in control of what I say. I'm completely in control of the editing process. I do all of the research myself. I try not to look at anybody else's articles about the same subject until right after I've finished them. Then I start reading and go, oh, I got that too. Yeah, I got that too. Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't agree. What a fucking answer. But really what I see is a lot of people, when now I know how to do this, when I look around, I see a lot of people who are struggling to understand something very simple, that it's about all of the information. It's not about part of the information. It's about all of the information. So then you've got to ask the question, what story do you want to write? And can you write all that information down in a way that people can sort of take it in a short space of time? Because that's the key to it. That's the key to journalism. That's the key to writing amazing stuff and really reporting, really getting the truth out there, is having like it's just not one bit. It's not just like, oh, you become a journalist, you're trained, you do this, and then you have something. You have to find the thing, and then you have to find the amount of that thing that you can explore in a short article or short enough article. Yeah. And this whole series is going to show people loads of stuff about the Epstein case that it doesn't even mention, because this is one of the most important things, is that once you understand how everything works and set down, you will have your own questions that make no sense about what has happened. You will suddenly go, but what about all of these girls who we know about who said this? Or what about all these guys over here who said this? And, oh, wait a minute, that might mean that there's not telling the truth. And then loads of things open up. More questions. And this allows, something like this allows other journalists and other people who want to seek the truth to go out and find little tidbits of information. And like and then those people often, they want to do what I do. They don't understand how to do. They contact me, we exchange a bit of information. I see if I can use it, but I also can then help other people to do the same thing. I think I'm probably going, that's where my route is. Newspace is probably going to end up into being like an independent journalism school, to teach people not how to be like, oh, a famous, you write this, you write that, to look for the story, find the story, and then report the story in full, when balls out, not caring about what one side or the other thinks, what any of these imaginary sides that we create in life think about it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I mean, yeah, I feel like we can leave it there, really.
Yeah, good. I'm looking forward to the second one.
Shaping a great reset for the post-corona era.